Go.
Welcome back to Tac Ops. I'm Greg. I'm here with Eric.
Howdy.
Just the two of us today. No guests this time, but there's a lot of stuff going on in the news. We're going to get to a couple of those different topics, but first, as always, we have our sponsor, the Commando Store. Eric, I think you have the webpage pulled up, but they're an online military surplus store. They have a whole bunch of different cool stuff on there. You saw some protective masks or something they have on there this week?
Yeah. So they have the Mestel Safety SGE 150 gas mask. It's a super slick gas mask, man. I've never seen a gas mask like this, but it looks like it's really slim to the face. It almost looks like they vacuum sealed a lot of the plastic into the face, so it's not this giant thing that sits out inside of your face. It actually has I don't know, it almost looks like a lens built into the plastic, so it helps give you a clearer view of what's in front of you. And it's also got the front-facing gas canister, which is really nice, because having the ones on the sides are kind of hard to see. Having that one in front of you is really easy to fit. But it actually looks like maybe you can modify it to do two on the side too, however you want. So it's a super cool gas mask. I've never seen a gas mask like this. It is a little bit more expensive. It comes in a small, medium, large, but I mean, it's a gas mask. You know what I'm saying? Like if shit goes down,
The life is worth it.
I mean, seriously, they come with this. Looks like you can use multiple canisters. So actually, one is a CBRN filter. So I mean, that's about as good as you get. And they also have a lot of ready packed meals, with the COVID shit going on, and we have gloves and stuff. And they also still have that deal going on if you are
the flour.
Yeah, let me slide the banner up real quick. So if you're a first responder, EMS, fire, police, hospitals, whatever, they can still give you a bunch of vital equipment for at cost. So make sure you hit them up for sure. They still have a big collection of stuff, and I'm pretty sure they still have. Oh wow, look at that! They got a nice little police trade-in night vision scope. That's pretty sweet. And then they still have flour, so you can survive on one bag for 50 days. We've always said before you can't eat the flour for 50 days, but it does help. So
You can do stuff with it.
yeah.
They have a bunch of interesting stuff. I mean, it's typically just a military surplus store, right? But
Right.
they always have all this different cool stuff, like the landmines they had before.
Yeah, the
All the
replica
crazy
man.
stuff.
Oh man, it's so
Yeah,
good.
fun to look through.
It's I love this store because it's so eclectic, and it's almost like this kind of crazy corner online Army Navy surplus store. I don't know whoever's listening across other that doesn't live in the United States, but we have these Army Navy surplus stores where they just kind of have this overflow of old military equipment and stuff you can go buy, and it almost seems like that, but it's always like really classy, nice, like to the point shit. It's not just a bunch of old jackets,
old blankets and stuff. Yeah,
yeah,
they're like $20 each.
yeah, exactly. Which is not. I mean, I love those places. I like to go in there and try to find old submarine gear and old submarine stuff. But it is a different environment. So this is kind of a it's an online version of that. That's a little bit more to the point, I guess. And these guys are always staying up to date on what's going on, especially they're just giving away stuff at cost, man. It's totally worth it. I love the Commando store, man. I really do.
So check them out. Commando Store. Commando is with a K. Store.com. And you get 5% off your first order with coupon code Tac Ops.
Definitely.
All lowercase, no space. That's it. Do we fulfill our sponsored obligations?
Yeah, I think we got it.
Can't
Yeah.
talk.
Yeah, if you ever want to be a sponsor, let us know. We could use more money. I'm just saying. All right, so let's start.
But first one is North Korea, right? You want to start out with that one?
Yeah,
That's a
North
fun one.
Korea.
Kim Jong-un.
Kim Jong-un is alive. Despite the rumors or whatever you heard, he is totally alive. So I got some photos from the North Korean News Org Twitter page. We can just kind of flip to him a little bit. But yeah, I mean, he's walking around. He looks healthy enough. I mean, he's at this big...
As healthy as he ever looks, right?
Yeah, he's at this parade opening for a chemical, fertilizer plant, I guess. It's a giant fertilizer plant, and they are super excited that they have a fertilizer plant. So, I mean, he's at this opening for it. I never really understand their ceremonies. But hey, I guess they
It's a
need a lot
big
of
deal. Yeah.
fertilizer. I mean, they need to eat.
Yeah.
So
But anytime they open any sort of plant or factory or anything, it's a big deal. And they want to put it all over the news and say, "Hey, look at what our leader is doing for us. He's going out of his way to provide the service for us. We don't deserve it, but he's doing it for us."
right.
It's just a way of staying in power, pretty much demonstrating that you're doing things for the people.
I mean, it's gorgeous too. It's got a basketball court built on it. I'm not sure what this is over here with the three squares, but I mean, it's a full facility. It looks like, here's the ceremony, I guess, right here with everybody standing there. But it looks like, this is a full, like you live here, I guess. I mean, I'm sure these are like hotels, or not,
Yeah.
no, not necessarily hotels, but I guess dormitories, whatever you call it.
Space. Yeah, could be.
And it looks gorgeous. I mean, that's one of the things that's really great about socialist development is they generally, if they do something, they generally go all out, and they will always
completely unnecessarily too.
yeah, and they will always, so they'll go far enough to make it amazing for the people too. That's one of the things that I was talking online today about, was how all the Russian submarines and how a lot of the old Soviet developed ships and stuff, they always like went way over the top and always did a lot for the crew. Like, the Typhoon class had the sauna, the new Bore class has a sauna. They've always had that, I guess. They don't have the pool anymore because I think the pool's kind of gross, but they do have the sauna. They have this like big open area where everybody can sit and hang out. That's kind of like a quiet room. Like they've always done more than the United States has when it comes to holding morale up underway. And this is a kind of a good view of it. Go to a fertilizer plant anywhere in the United States and see if they have a basketball court. You'll never find that shit.
Yeah, but which one would you rather work at, Eric?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely don't need a basketball court because I'm never gonna go play basketball at work. So I'm never gonna live at work either, right?
Yeah, you might want to get paid more than just enough food to survive for the day.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure this, I don't know where they developed this at specifically, but I'm sure there's a bunch of farmers in the area that would love to come in and work not on a farm that's dying for a bunch of people that they can't feed.
I'm actually looking it up now. It's in Sungchang. And Google Earth doesn't have. Oh, wait. No, they do. Okay. So they have in 2018 the base image. So if you just went to Google Maps and looked at it, you could find it under construction. And if you change it up to the most recent, which is from November 2019, you can see they're pretty far in the construction process. Unfortunately, Eric's has control of the video right now, so I can't. But yeah, they're definitely constructing it. It's on the edge right next to the river, which you can see in that picture too. But anyway, so North Korea news, they said that he appeared on television, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but we only have pictures, so there's no video of it that we have access to.
Right.
Which is kind of weird. So there's a possibility still that maybe they're just old pictures or something. He's probably alive. I don't think that's necessarily the case, but that's one thing people are bringing up.
Yeah, I mean, we could probably look at satellite imagery, unless they got some kind of clone out there and they just reenacted the whole thing. But there's a big crowd of people out there and stuff. I'm sure they probably know he's alive. I mean, I think at this point, if there was any idea he wasn't alive, I think there would still be a lot of rumors. But they seem to be all quashed at this point.
Yeah, you wouldn't come out and say, as North Korean media, you wouldn't come out and say that he is alive if he's not alive. You'd slowly start breaking the news, right? Preparing the people for the news of that, trying to figure out all the background information to keep things stabilized. Because that's the big thing that you and I were talking about before we started here, was if Kim Jong-un dies, that could be a pretty bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, it could really destabilize the country. He's the guy that's holding everything together. In their view. So they all rely on him. That's one of the things about being the supreme commander and god of your country, is that if you don't get it done, nobody knows what to do because they put all your faith in you. So if he dies, and especially if he dies young and they're, we're all going to kind of assume that, you shouldn't be dying at 36 years old or 35 years old unless you're doing a bunch of drugs and eating a bunch of shit you shouldn't be. I mean, look how fat he is. I mean, it's pretty obvious that he's partying. He's the leader of a freaking country. He's a supreme commander of a country. Who wouldn't party, man? That's what you do. Why would you go through all that shit if you can't party like the greatest rock star in the world, man? Especially if you don't have anybody to really answer to. We were talking before, he's not like Putin. He doesn't really have to have international relations with people. He's got 2 people he's got to, be cool with, Other than that, nobody really gives a shit. He can say whatever the fuck he wants. He's just shooting rockets off. We're always waiting for them to, launch the next missile towards Japan and see what happens, where it's going to fall. And
yeah, and nobody really ever says no to him too, right? None of his commanders can really say anything to him to stop him or to do this or not to do that. And I think that's the problem with him smoking and eating and all the health problems he has. Who's going to tell him that, hey, maybe you should cut back on the smoking. It's not good for you.
Yeah, I mean,
I wouldn't want to be that guy to say that to him.
Yeah, I don't want to be that dude. I mean, somebody, I'm sure he has a doctor that's like, hey, look, this is probably in your best interest. And he's probably like, hey, man, thanks, doc, but I don't give a fuck because I'm trying to not die every day. I have to come up with plans every day so I don't get assassinated, I don't get fucking nuked, I don't get invaded. Like, he's living a lot of crazy shit on the side. And what do you do?
It's got to be a real paranoid lifestyle, right? You always have to be afraid somebody's coming to get you.
Yeah, and I mean, I think he works a lot. I think he's trying to do whatever the fuck he can to keep going. I'm sure he's probably taking a lot of uppers to keep going, like a lot of people think with our president and everybody else. I work with multiple people who take him at work all the time, and it's pretty obvious that they take him, and, what do you do? Like, when you're trying to work on your PhD or you're trying to run an entire country or you're trying to do this, whatever, man, you got to do what you have to do, right? And I feel like he's taken a lot of, like, quick fixes to make himself happy. He's smoking a bunch of cigarettes while he's busy all day, probably taking a little uppers to keep him going up all night. He's probably drinking a bunch. He's probably, who knows what he's doing with the women around there, because, we all see how, like, cults and everything else play out, So yeah. I don't know, man. I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, they got all these weird, maybe we shouldn't get into it because we're going to get demonetized because of this, but whatever. They have all these weird drugs these days, all of the designer drugs, which are on the verge of being illegal, but not illegal. You know how it is? Like in the old days, it used to be the main drugs you took. But I was talking to somebody. They say everyone in the White House and the government and stuff, they're all taking, and I do not remember the name of the drug, but it was something that was pretty much like an upper, but it wasn't illegal. It was on the edge of being illegal, and it just keeps you going all. I think it's a narcolepsy drug, if I remember correctly, and it just keeps you going all the time.
I do remember hearing about that.
Yeah, and then they take another one to like calm them down later on to fall asleep, kratom or something like that. Kratom, I don't know. Anyway, it's all just different ways to skirt the law, and supposedly they're all doing this in Washington D.C. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's like guys buying big dick pills. There's a chemical from some spider or whatever that when it bites you, they found out that it, you can't get rid of your heart on or whatever for hours and hours. But yeah, people will die. They kind of die from it because you're not supposed to be taking spider venom, but it works. So I don't know, man. The rules are weird in the United States when it comes to the FDA and drugs and. Go to GNC. It's a fucking snake oil shop. You know what I mean? Like a vast majority of everything in that shop is garbage. It's just a bunch of stuff that they say is in there and it's probably not in there, right? And that's part of playing the game in the United States, though. You can't be doing the obvious illegal shit. Like you can't be smoking no weed, man. No weed for you. But you can be taking some spider venom for your dick. I don't know, man. This place is crazy. And
then pretty soon that'll be illegal, and then there's going to be another even stranger one that'll come out. That's what always happens, right? That's what happened with ecstasy, right? That was originally legal?
Yeah.
And Adderall too. Again, maybe we're going to get in trouble for mentioning these names, but I remember hearing that Adderall was prescribed. People took it for weight loss, just to lose weight. And then they made it.
I think you still can.
Drug or whatever.
I don't know if you can.
Yeah, but you have to have a prescription for it though.
Right. If there's a reason a doctor can give it to you for whatever reason, make your life better for whatever reason, they'll give it to you. You just gotta
Yeah,
play the game,
it's all yeah, it's short term, gain for long term punishment, right? You got to
Mm,
pay the price over the longer term. It's gonna fuck you up over taking that stuff for years and years
yeah, definitely.
for a short term gain. That's all drugs are, pretty much.
Shout out to
Anyway,
whiskey.
though, I think it's a good thing that he's alive.
Yeah,
A lot of people are talking about, they kind of almost wish he would be dead, different things like that. I think it's a good thing he'd be alive. It's kind of like Saddam Hussein, for example. We knew he's not a great guy. We knew he was doing different things. He wasn't treating his people very well, but he kept everything in check in the region, right? And now, I mean, think about it today. Iraq is just a complete mess, and now you have Iran trying to come in there. You have different terrorist organizations. It's just a complete mess. Before, you knew who your enemy was. You knew where they were. They all wore uniforms. Okay, you can keep an eye on them easily. And now it's people who blend into the civilians, right?
yeah,
So, and not only that, but North Korea has nuclear weapons, so that adds a whole another element to it if they were to break down or had instability there, and who knows what can happen with those nuclear weapons.
yeah. And they're working on putting them on missiles too. So I mean, they're not that far away from breaking that boundary where they can launch from land to your land. So, as, especially Japan. Japan's pretty much screwed at this point. They're already in the target zone, but we're not. But we're close. I think Hawaii's in the target zone now, right? You can get hit by a nuke in Hawaii, but you can't get hit by a nuke from North Korea in CONUS without them launching the Sinpo, the ballistic missile submarine
Oh,
that
we're
they
getting
have.
close.
Yeah,
Well, the last ICBMs they launched, they figured that it could reach almost anywhere in the U.S. That Hwasong 15, I'd have to look it up. This was a couple years ago now, but it was all based just on the trajectory. The fact that they launched it straight up and it came almost straight back down, and then you can extrapolate that to see if they would have fired it at a more optimum trajectory, how far it would have gone. And there's a lot of leeway in there,
right,
how far it would have reached. And
right.
also, we talked about this before too. The re-entry vehicle was kind of tumbling, and it looked like it had burned up in the atmosphere.
Right.
So it's a question if it would even be able to work properly.
Yeah,
That's
I
even
think
if
that's
they
the
can get a nuclear warhead on board.
right. That's the only thing holding them back. I think at this point is, obviously depth with their missiles, but I think they haven't re-entered yet. That was the big thing
Right.
is we haven't seen one re-enter without burning up.
Yeah. And not only that, but when they fired them straight up and straight down, it went straight down through the atmosphere, which you're in the atmosphere for much less time. You're slicing directly straight through it. Whereas if you're launching for range, you're going to be slicing through the atmosphere at an angle, which
Right.
is you're in the atmosphere for a longer period of time, and it's going to be more intense and probably not survive as it would if it was straight down through.
Yeah, definitely. We need to have a nuke expert on here pretty soon. I don't think we also talked to Greg
We had
Kursik, but
yeah,
he was kind of the launching platform expert. I want to try to have like a MERV expert or something that's really like, actually dealt with the missile itself, not necessarily launching it.
It'll be really fun. I've been looking at is seeing if we can get someone from the ballistic missile defense agency, or somebody who worked on Star Wars, like the SDI program.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
I bet we could find some doctor, some physicist who worked on that, who's retired now. I'm gonna try to look into that.
Yeah, definitely. If you know anybody, make sure you hit us up on our email or whatever it is. I don't even remember what it is anymore. Sorry, I should mention that. It's tacopspodcast@gmail.com. So if you know anybody, let us know, and we'll go from there. Anyway, so yeah,
So
Kim Jong Un's
that's
alive.
pretty much North Korea. I mean, it seems like he's probably alive. He was at his resort up there for a while, and now he's back.
So next thing I wanted to talk about, which was pretty big that happened since our last podcast, was so two guys. I don't know if you guys are on Twitter. I know a lot of my followers come from Twitter because that's generally where I have my biggest reach. That in the subreddit, but if you're not on Twitter, you should get on there because man, there's a lot of really good people on there that release some really cool stuff just all day. It's just they love it. They just love posting stuff, and this is what they just love to do. I don't know if they're at work, not doing their work, but this is what they do, and I love it. And so The first guy is Captain Navy, so at CAPT_Navy. He is a Russian. He was an ex-Russian surface officer, and he posts a lot of really cool old Russian stuff. I don't think he actually lives in Russia. I think he lives near Sevastopol, from what from what I've known about him. But he really loves the Russian side of the whole, the game, I guess, whatever you want to call it. And he releases a lot of really cool stuff. And so I pulled this up from Tyler's website, the Warzone. If you guys haven't seen it, obviously it's an awesome website, and he collected it really well. So I'm just going to use his website instead of picking through a bunch of Twitter photos. But the Alpha class was the Ferrari of the submarine community. I mean, it was Russia's fastest, if not the fastest, submarine in production. And I mean, just look at it. What a gorgeous boat, man.
It just looks, yeah, it looks like a sports car.
Oh my God.
Submarine.
Yeah, there's
How fast is it? It's over 40 knots, right? Top
yeah,
speed.
I guess it really depends on who you talk to, but it's probably it's probably like 42, 43 knots if I were to guess, which is fast, man. I mean, that's
Right.
most torpedoes will run between 80, 90 knots. Heavyweight torpedoes will now. So that's half the speed of a torpedo. I mean, you can outrun a torpedo if you're far away enough and you hear it far away enough. So it man, and you could catch up to anybody. There's no surface boat. There's no surface ship that I know of that's going to go faster than 40 knots. Unless it's a hydrofoil or something built for like real high speed, which you don't ever see in a battle. Like we're never going to see some kind of crazy hydrofoil launching missiles or some shit.
Right. But unless it's like a small missile boat or something, but even that, yeah, these submarines aren't going up against missile boats or going up against carrier strike groups or other submarines and stuff. So
right. And talking to guys that served back in the day, they said this thing was loud. It was like super duper loud when it was at high speed. There was a lot of shaking. I don't think they developed the boat around sound mounts and stuff, so everything was just strapped to the hull, and we're gonna go for it. We're gonna turn this thing into a high speed Ferrari. But it's such a gorgeous boat, man. And so they actually shared photos of it actually in dry dock. So here's a picture of it with the props out, and it looks like
the props are interesting.
Yeah,
because these are stuff you never see, right?
No.
You never see American ones. You always see the Russian one, or not always, but they seem to be a little bit more open with their prop design and layout.
And this is a really basic prop for a high speed submarine. Like this doesn't have like a modern geez, I'm having a brain fart right now with the with the new propulsor. There you go. That's what I'm trying to think of. It doesn't have a propulsor on it, so it actually has. It's just an open fan, and this thing's going above 40 knots. This doesn't have anything.
That's gotta be real loud.
I bet it just spun so fast and just went so fast because they were just like, let's just make this thing go balls to the wall. Fuck it. And they throw a molten salt reactor in it. And so that's how that thing got so fast, is because with a molten salt reactor, it reacts a lot better to, so I went to nuke school, I failed out, so don't listen to me, right? But from what I understand, whenever you use a liquid metal like a molten salt, it transfers the energy a lot better. That's one of the problems with pressurized water reactors, is you have to transfer the water to water, right? So you lose a lot of energy in the process, where with the molten salt reactors you don't. I mean, it goes directly into the whatever they were using. Pretty sure they were using some kind of steam or something, but that thing was fast, man. Fast for that just basic technology. I mean, put a propulsor on that. I mean, that thing may break 50 knots at this point. They could man, they could just, I don't know. This thing was great. So here's another front view of it, and just looking super slick. But they started showing pictures of this reactor getting pulled out, and I was like, what is this? And so from what I understand, this is an attachment to pull it out. And so you can see, which this is a crazy picture in itself. I mean, they're getting ready to pull out a molten salt reactor, and they're just like hanging out with a bunch of plastic bags around them. I've never seen no shit like this when it comes to working on reactors. This is crazy, especially with Russia's, history. But man, that's a really interesting picture right there. They look like they're getting ready to handle COVID-19, not not like COVID-19 patients at a hospital. They don't look like they're getting ready to pull out a molten salt reactor. But I don't know, whatever.
Mhm.
So here's the original
And this is
tweets.
something you'll never see of an American submarine, right? You'll never see the pressurized water reactors of a U.S. sub pulled out like that. And that's the interesting thing. How did they get these pictures? We talked about it a little bit before, but I wonder if it was just people hanging out there, spectators looking, or if it was officially released pictures. They allowed them to release these,
I don't know, man. I have no idea. Yeah,
or maybe he knew that captain knew enough people where they allowed him in to observe this.
I don't think he took these pictures. I'm pretty sure they were just released and we don't see them. One of the things that I found, and so this I follow a lot of like Japanese Twitter accounts because there's a lot of shit you don't see. There's a lot of stuff, and I have a lot of people that follow me, and I try to follow as many people as I can and try to pay attention. And if you just kind of roll down that narrow line of like a bunch of American followers, UK followers, you'll never see the Russian stuff. And so that's why I started following Cap Navy, because he had access to this. I don't know where he finds it at. I've never talked to him personally about it, but he has access to these other databases that are in Russian that won't pop up on Google. You know, if you don't specifically type submarine in Russian, you're never going to find Russian stuff. It's just going to all be American
Exactly.
stuff. So it's what we've always seen with social media, right? You end up being in this like reverberating box of whatever your environment is. And so,
Yeah, you type in English, you're gonna get English results. Yeah.
yeah, so I'm pretty sure he just came across some database that's Russian. It's probably some old Russian TV pictures or something. I don't know, man. I have no idea. I'll actually send him a DM and ask him. Um, but anyway, so another account that's really good is SaturnX. You can actually see it here, SaturnX1. He's a guy that popped up on Twitter a little bit after I did, and he's got this enormous collection of photos. And so he was always like, how do I get these photos out there? I'm like, we got to use some hashtags. So we kind of created Sub Sunday together, and Sub Sunday is now used by like, you know, the German Navy and the U.S. Navy, and these kind of like official accounts and stuff use it now, and it's really great because we kind of have this day where we can like post photos and stuff, and he posted photos of what we think is the K123 with their reactor pulled out. So you can obviously
Hmm.
tell it's a Russian submarine by the yellow paint going around it. That's just
Yeah, that
just
old faded
obvious Russian
look.
technology construction. But you can see where the reactor was mounted and stuff. This is definitely where our reactor was mounted inside. I don't know if it's the same as these pictures that were posted, but um,
Well, it says K123 on there.
yeah. And Tyler
So
does
what
his
was that?
research, so I'm assuming these are correct. So so here's
Mhm.
K123 pulled out, and this is the actual liquid metal reactor pulled, just hanging there. They actually flipped it, from what I understand, to drain it, and then they flipped it back up. And this is kind of the mounted version of what it looks like. So I I don't know. I know a little bit about reactors, and from what I understand, this generally when you see a bottom like this is like a catch pan. So if for whatever reason the reactor failed and it did somehow melt down, generally molten salt reactors won't melt down. They'll just solidify inside the reactor, which sucks because now the reactor's just completely trashed. You can't do anything with it anymore. But they will put a catch pan underneath it to like catch it in case it does somehow melt. So I'm pretty sure that's what this little casing is at the bottom, but flipped up. But yeah, there's just some pictures of a alpha class reactor. Man, how crazy is that?
So real quick, I found a little bit of background on that. The K123, the Sev Smash of the Severodvinsk, was decommissioned in 1996 for scrapping, and it looks like maybe they're finally getting around to scrapping it, pulling out its reactor, going through that whole long process to make it safe, environmentally friendly, to completely dismantle it.
Right. Yeah, good
So those are
stuff.
pretty cool.
I love showing off nuclear reactor stuff.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of that stuff. It's one of the things I regret about failing in the Navy is not going through nuclear power school. I mean, being a nuke sucks. Don't get me wrong, but it's a pretty cool job to say you had working around a reactor. But anyways, so there was that.
And
Next one.
there's more. Oh, sorry, if you have more here, but we're going to talk about the Chinese submarine, right?
Chinese
Sticking on
submarine.
submarine news.
Yeah, so this is a tweet that was put out here. Let me scroll right into the tweet put out by the Naval Institute. So in 2003, planned, the People's Liberation Army Navy, obviously China, investigated a drifting sub spotted earlier by fishermen. They thought it was intruding, but it was one of their own Ming class submarines. And so when they boarded it, they found that there was a crew of 70 and they all died. They were all just dead,
Wow.
floating on the surface, which was I had never heard of this story. So I did a little research into it, and found out that they basically they suffocated, but the story from the Chinese Navy was that one of their operators opened the wrong valve and it caused diesel exhaust to flood into the people space, and then they asphyxiated, almost like somebody hanging out in the garage and they just put their exhaust into their car, right?
Hmm.
One of
Yeah.
the things I thought was really stupid about that is like I don't understand why you would design exhaust to pour into the people space. I've what what is the point of that? There's no real reason to have an exhaust valve exhaust into the boat. That is going to do
Hmm.
nothing but cause problems. There's
And this,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
and this is based on the Romeo class, right? And it's a upgraded or a redesigned version.
Right.
So it seems like, I mean, the Soviets probably figured this out. They're pretty good at building submarines, and then on top of it, the Chinese took some knowledge and did more to it. So I can understand how that could be an unlikely scenario, in your opinion, at least.
Right. And so one of the things, and don't get me wrong, like if you're on a submarine and you're running a diesel, you will get exposed to diesel exhaust. It just happens. Like they're not perfect. You know,
Mm.
you're trying to work with generally a snorkel, right? You're not just most submarines don't run on the surface, right? So you're generally trying to work with a snorkel that's opening and closing because it's getting hit by seawater, right? Because the snorkel has a what they call the head valve, and the head valve, whenever it gets hit by seawater, it'll have a sensor that closes the valve. So you're not sitting there just pouring seawater in case a wave comes over it, right? Because you could just have a random wave. If it's a high sea state, that thing's just gonna keep getting smashed, and you can't just keep pouring seawater into the intake of a diesel, right? So it has a valve that'll open and shut and kind of stop that from happening. So, um, one of the things that I thought was really weird about all of this is that if it was carbon monoxide poisoning, for one, they're on the surface, right? Just pop a hatch. We've seen multiple reactor accidents. You know, uh, uh, oh man, there's the Foxtrot class submarines that were running in Cuba that had to surface because they were too hot. We had Captain Ramsey talking about how they had to pop up because they were too hot and they had to rotate people out, right? It's one of the things you can do with a submarine. You can just emergency surface, pop up, open some hatches, right? Now, what I found kind of weird about it is you could easily do that. You could just pop up, open a hatch. You can recycle the with just a fan. You could just have fans that run and just pull the air in, and you're good to go. So that story doesn't really make any sense to me because they were on the surface. Obviously you can't just have a hatch open if you're on the surface just running because you could flood the boat if just a random wave hits it. But
Would they have sensors though to let them know that there was a high level of carbon monoxide?
yeah, yeah, definitely. So submarines have atmospheric monitoring systems that will monitor for generally the common ones are carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, oxygen. It'll generally show you air pressure because most submarines will run at a vacuum naturally because you have air compressors and stuff running that will pull the air in. There's no air to bring into the boat, so you generally don't get a overpressure unless you have the compressed air you stored go into the boat, which is possible. Sometimes you get overpressured, but most of the time the boat sits at a vacuum. And then it'll tell you, refrigerant,
Yeah,
right? Because a
lower
lot of boats
pressure.
use refrigerant.
Yeah,
Uh,
not a vacuum necessarily though. Just lower pressure than atmospheric pressure, right?
No, it'll tell you. It'll tell you based on atmospheric pressure. It'll tell you if there's a vacuum or not in the boat. You'll know if there's a vacuum running, because if not, then you can end up running the air compressors and you'll just end up sucking the boat to death, right? Which is
Mhm.
where I'm going to kind of go with this with the diesels. Um, so naturally they kind of run in a vacuum. So they also test the atmospheric monitoring system generally tests for like refrigerants, right? Because you have to have an air conditioning system. You got to have something to keep the food cold, so you have to have a
Yeah.
freezer. And then it'll test for like hydrogen, pure hydrogen. And I'm sure that I didn't have an AIP system, or I didn't have any type of system like that, but I'm sure they're checking for like hydrogen peroxide, whatever they're using to mix as their AIP propellant for their submarine. So it just really depends on the boat. But yeah, there's definitely a monitoring system for it. So they would be alarmed, like, hey, look, there's diesel exhaust pouring into the boat. You guys should probably surface and open a hatch, right? And you also have the sail too, which you don't necessarily have to pop a hatch in the top of the boat. You can just pop the sail hatch and just run on the surface like you would seeing any submarine come in or come out to port, right? Just a lot of this carbon monoxide shit doesn't make any sense to me. So what I believe happened is that while they were running their diesel, I think the diesel actually pulled a vacuum and caused the crew to die due to vacuum exposure, not due to exposure to carbon monoxide poisoning. The reason I believe that is because if you run the boat to a vacuum, right? So I was actually qualified as a diesel operator on a LA Class 3. So we ran a Fairbanks Morse engine. So here's a picture of the engine. I actually put this little rant together for everybody. But so this engine is enormous, and it has a supercharger on it that will increase the volume of the air coming into it, because it's a diesel, right? Most diesels have some type of supercharger, turbocharger on them. And one of the things they taught me was that when you run a diesel this big in a space this small with this small amount of air volume, this diesel will have enough power to pull a vacuum and kill you, and you won't even really notice it. And I don't know if any American submariners have died from a vacuum. So I can't really. This is all rhetoric at this point, so I don't want you to kind of take this with a grain of salt. But we actually did have safety switches built into the boat where if it pulls a vacuum, it'll shut the diesel down. Right? You don't want to kill the operators trying to run this thing. Right? It doesn't make any sense. Just put it on the surface, float it, just get towed back. 99% of the time, that's the answer. So if you were to run this thing and those vacuum switches failed, which if you're talking about an old boat like the Romeo class, you're talking about a 2003 China, which is a brand spanking new China that probably doesn't really understand that you need to test those switches every single time that you're supposed to check them. Fuck it. Let's just sign it off, say it's good, If those switches failed, you could
we've
pull
seen that before too, right?
Yeah, you could pull
And
that vacuum.
that happens all the time.
Yeah, all the time. And the Americans, we went through the same shit in the 60s, right? So we had to develop, sub-safe and all this stuff. And so if you have those switches fail and you have a diesel like this, you're talking about a Romeo class, right? I actually have a picture of what I believe is the Romeo class diesel on the main, or the diesel on the main class, which is the A6E 390 ZC1. Let me pull the picture up and you can see a little bit. It is a full-size giant diesel engine. It has enough power. It actually has twin turbos on it instead of a supercharger, but it has enough power to suck a vacuum down in a boat, and it could kill you. And if you pull the vacuum in, one of the things you can't do is open a hatch, right? To open the hatch, you have to equalize pressure, or the vacuum will hold the hatch shut. So regardless if it's locked or not, regardless of where you're at, you're not going to be able to open that thing. Ask any submariner. They've gotten to a point where they have to somehow relieve pressure to open the hatches because they'll just be so tight. And I believed that's what happened. I think that diesel actually pulled a vacuum down on that crew and ended up killing them. I mean, these things are not. These
it's
things are no
such a
joke.
creepy story.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I never even heard of this story before, so I don't know if it was even public knowledge before the Naval Institute wrote the story on it. But that's creepy. Like they said they didn't realize it was your own submarine at first, right? They found a submarine floating And then they found out it was their own submarine, obviously. But they went on board and they just found all these people sitting in their chairs and they're dead.
Yeah,
Sounds like the
just
start
hanging out dead.
of a horror movie or something.
Yeah. Oh man, it's crazy. What a crazy story, man. To be honest, I didn't know about that either. I had never heard about this. So that's why I love following the Naval Institute. I love the Naval Institute. They've always been behind my back. They are behind my back. They've always had my back. They've always always been there for anything I do. A lot of their stuff is free right now. So if you go check out the Naval Institute website, you can. I think they've released a lot of their stuff for free because of the virus and stuff. So it's they have a proceedings podcast, which is if you ever want to like see a podcast where they actually are talking to officials, kind of in this. They're not obviously cussing and they're not bringing up stupid stories like we do, but they actually will sit down with admirals and stuff and they'll actually talk to the Navy. So if you ever want to see some, one of those official podcasts, they're definitely one of the best ones to listen to. So anyways, that's my little rant about why I think they died on that sub. Crazy story, man. Crazy.
It is, yeah.
I got another crazy story for you.
Oh yeah.
So let me scroll up a little bit. So this is from NBC4 New York, but they found an exotic fire dancer who was a QAnon follower arrested near the USNS Comfort with a car full of knives. So we talked before about that in LA near the USNS Mercy. They had that train engineer who tried to run his train into the USNS Mercy because he felt like he needed to attack it at that point, right?
Yeah, because of 5G or whatever. Actually, I don't know if it was related to 5G, but we should have mentioned that because I know they're taking down videos for anyone who mentions that on YouTube.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, anyway. It's 5G. It's radio technology. Come on now, let's be real. Like, it's stupid. But, so this lady, her name was Jessica Prim. She apparently had a background with the secret police because she had been mentioning about how she wanted to kill Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton, some other stuff. And so they had already kind of had an eye on her. And so she decided to do a live Facebook feed of her sitting outside the USS Intrepid, which was right next to the Comfort. Same. I think it's literally the same water space. You could just jump off the Intrepid, or you could jump off the Growler and swim over to the Comfort, right? And so she was sitting outside in the parking lot, and she started live videoing. I don't know what you call it on Facebook. I don't use Facebook, but I actually got the video. I found the Facebook video of her sitting in her car. So let me scroll back a little bit. And she's
says on there she's stripped down to her bra and showing off her nude tattoos on her arm.
Yeah, so apparently this isn't all the video. This is only part of it. Yeah, you can see it. Let me scroll back to the very beginning where you can kind of see her face. But she had been live Facebook videoing the whole way to the parking lot, and she'd been ranting the whole way, and she started like you could see her shirt hanging off to the right. I don't think she was really showing off her bra. She just had that sweater hanging off, and she was showing her tattoo off. I don't necessarily. She's just doing some kind of weird nudity shit, but yeah, she's sitting there in her car in the parking lot, and she starts talking to the police, and they're like, "Hey, look, you can't be hanging out in the parking lot." And so they were like, "You need to get out, and we're going to search your car." And so here's a video of the New York arresting her. And so they searched her car and they found I think 18 knives in her car. And I don't live in New York. I've been to the museum. I've been to the USS Intrepid.
You gonna start throwing them?
Huh?
Yeah. Oh yeah. You're gonna 18 knives. You gonna start throwing them or something?
Yeah, I don't know if they were giant knives or they were kitchen knives. I don't know, but I know in New York City they are a lot more strict about weapons than they are in Texas, where we live.
Yeah, I've learned that ever since moving here.
Yeah. So in Texas, you could walk around with a knife in your hand, and unless you're fucking with people, generally just everybody will leave you alone. But in New York City, you can't be walking around with fucking knives, man. And she had a bunch of them, and she was obviously live tweeting, and she'd already been on the list for the Secret Service. I mean, you gotta come on now. And so you can actually, that's the entrance to into the Intrepid Museum. I don't even think she's in the parking lot. I think she's actually sitting on the side of the street, because that's literally the entrance you see to the place. So I don't know, man.
Yeah, you have to cross the street to get there.
Yeah.
I've only been there one time, right? I know
Yeah.
you've been there too. Huh. And why Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton? Neither one of them are in the government right now. If she has a problem with the virus and everything going on, I don't know.
Well, she was talking about how Trump was speaking to her, and she wanted to. She was actually quoted. She was kind of rambling, so the quote is kind of weird. I could pull it up, but she was ranting about uh, Trump speaking to her and how she wanted to kind of get back, and that she was the coronavirus. And
She was.
yeah, she was the
Good thing they
coronavirus.
got her then, right?
Yeah, definitely.
We don't have to worry about it anymore, right?
I mean, I've been to the Intrepid Museum, and they don't have like metal detectors. It's an open park. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah.
not Six Flags. It's not like, one of those places where
I
you're
think
going to walk through a metal detector.
I think they did have. When was the last time you were there? I thought I did go through a metal detector. I was there in 2017.
Oh, you know what?
2018?
I actually was there. I was there. Oh, you know what? I was there for an interview, so I actually got there before the park opened, and I just walked through the gate with the guy who was producing it. So I don't know. You may be right. I didn't go the same way in. It would make sense that they have metal detectors, but I don't know, man.
Yeah, especially in New York. You know, they have metal detectors anywhere you go in the Empire State Building and all that stuff.
And knives are scary, man. Talk to any of the police; they'll tell you the knives are the scary part, because you
Yeah, I
generally
know they
don't see it
talk
coming,
about
and it's over.
exactly. Yeah, and they say about how a knife is more effective than a gun at less than 10 yards or 10 meters or something like that. I don't remember the exact fact, but
I mean, Kevlar is not a puncture-proof material, so you can actually go through Kevlar with a knife. It doesn't really do it. It does help, but it doesn't do a whole lot. And the police don't generally carry around plates. You know what I mean? So, and
museum. If anyone lives in New, sorry, go ahead. Actually, let me before I sidetrack.
well, no, I was just saying that generally Kevlar vests also don't have protection down sides and in certain other spots, and they don't cover your legs and your calves and other stuff. So yeah, crazy. But go ahead.
I was gonna say if anyone if you have a trip planned to New York or something, definitely go there. I mean, Eric can confirm this. That is a lot of fun to go through. It's one of the few aircraft carriers that's a museum that you can go walk through.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun, really interesting. And I don't know what they had when you were there. They had the space shuttle on the back of the carrier when I was there. I don't remember what.
They
space
still
shuttle.
do. They still have it there.
Oh,
It's
okay.
the challenge. No, not Challenger, obviously. I don't know. I don't know, to be honest. I can't remember. They had just got it there, or they were actually refurbing it when I got there, so I didn't get to see it.
And then they also have a bunch of fighter jets right on the deck there.
Yeah.
They have it's either an SR-71 or the related aircraft, the A-12. But yeah, it's a really fun thing to go through. And I did not get to go on to the Growler,
Yeah.
right? The USS Growler. I did not get to go on there. The line was going to be over an hour long, they said. So I decided not to wait for it.
Yeah, it's one of the things that sucks about the submarine tours, especially if you're in a really populated area. So I actually went. So when I got there, I had to do an interview for the biography channel, and so they got me there an hour early. We went into control. We did the interview. As I'm trying to leave, the entire boat flooded with people, and we couldn't get off. Like, we had to wait. We had to wait for them to leave, and it was not fun. It felt like, I've been on submarines, and I felt claustrophobic in that. Because for one, that boat's a lot smaller than nuclear powered submarines, and two, you're on there with a bunch of people
Right.
that don't know shit about what this thing is, and they're not going to go anywhere. So you got one guy who's just really interested, and I love that he's interested, but he's holding up the line because you can't get two people in and out. It's just you're stuck in the hallway of where the officer spaces is, and the meeting rooms and the wardrooms and shit. It's all just one level. You can't go down to a lower level or an upper level. With like the nuclear submarines have 3 levels, so you can just maybe go to a lower level and keep going. They got one level on them old diesel subs. You got one way in, you got to go all the way through, and you got basically one way out unless you can get out through the sail. And it was not fun. I was stuck. We were all stuck there. We couldn't go anywhere, and man, I was just sitting there narrating for these people, like, oh look, so here's a head, you know, like, I sat on one of these, and it was, you know, and so I just started, you know, trying to entertain these people while we were stuck. It's
Yeah, that was same thing with the Intrepid there. When you go up into the tower, the control tower there, or the superstructure of the carrier, it's the same thing. It's one path you can take, you can't deviate or go any other direction, and you're stuck there with 50 people in front of you, 50 people behind you, and yeah, you can get claustrophobic pretty quickly. So I can imagine on the submarine it would be even worse.
Yeah, I mean, you have to, if you're gonna go to a submarine like that, like if you're going to Seawolf Park in Galveston, you can go there any day of the week, and it's gorgeous, and there's generally not a whole lot of people there because you got to drive out to Galveston and all that stuff, and it's amazing. You go there any day of the week, and it's an amazing place to go to. But with the Growler, you got to hit a certain time, like you got to go
Yeah.
there on like super early Tuesday and get there first, or you got to be there like really late when they're gonna get ready to close. It's just and it is an amazing boat. It's the only boat I think at this point with a Regulus missile sitting on top of it.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
So it's one you're not gonna see anything like that anywhere else. I think maybe the ballistic or the missile museum has it, but yeah, I mean not sitting on top of it in launch position. I mean it's a
Yeah.
cool submarine, man, but.
Yeah, and you'll be there for a while too. We went through the carrier. I think that took us 2 hours. Now maybe it was because me. I stopped and looked at more things than most people would. But that was just 2 hours alone. So even if you try to pick the perfect time, you're going to be in that park for 3, maybe even 4 hours if you want to see everything.
Right.
So it's just hard. I mean, it's New York City. No matter what you do, it's going to be traffic, anything.
I'm a big believer in going to the museums. If I mean, you're never unless you have. I mean, man, I've been trying to work with the Navy for the past it feels like 2 years now to try to take a ride again. I mean, supposedly they're supposed to be sending out me and David Ayer together, I guess, on a ride. But man, it's been like a year now. I've been waiting. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. It's so hard to get a ride unless you are a family member or you obviously know somebody on there. I mean,
Yeah.
so if you
All
ever
the
want to
bureaucracy and everything.
yeah, if you ever want to experience it, I mean, that's the best you're gonna get at this point. Go to the Nautilus. I mean, that if you want to see something newer, that's obviously the best place to go because it's the most realistic feel of it, and it has it has a reactor compartment on it. So
Maybe if we want, we should go to some of these places. We were down there not too far from Galveston for the World of Warships event on the USS Texas there. So
yeah,
maybe
you
we
know,
can start
actually,
some sort of thing like if you guys want to join the Patreon, we'll use that money to maybe take a trip somewhere. If you want to go out to Groton or different places like that, we could take a trip out there.
yeah, man, I think that'd be fun. Well, the Texas is shut down, not necessarily because of the virus. It's shut down because of the leaking, but
Yeah.
yeah, the Lexington. There's a lot of really good places, especially in Texas. If we get enough money to fly to the Intrepid, I'd be down. But
Or our Area 51 trip, man. I still want
yeah,
to do that.
yes, we
I
still
still
gotta
want
do
to
that.
do that. I wonder if we can start like a GoFundMe or something, so we can pay for the satellite internet, which might be cheaper eventually once SpaceX gets going with their Starlink.
Right.
That might be easier if we wait till then. But SpaceX is always ends up getting delayed a lot. Um, and take a trip out there and hike out there up on top of that Tikaboo Peak
Yeah.
and do a live podcast from up there. That would be fun.
Man, it's really interesting. I've been for whatever reason I've been looking at a bunch of like old aviation technology and research documentaries and stuff. And God, just Area 51 was all of it. Like they were just doing all the
Oh yeah.
stealth technology out there. I could see how people think it's well, obviously alien, the whole alien thing. We're gonna talk about that too because they released all the video. We're gonna talk about that later. But like it's one of
Oh
the things
yeah,
about
that'll be
technology.
fun. One of my
It's
favorite topics.
yeah. I mean, one of the things about technology is it generally produces a bunch of weird shit. And the public is not ready for it, especially
Yeah.
if you just throw it out there. Imagine throwing drones out there 50 years ago. You're gonna freak people out, man. They're gonna be like, "What the fuck is that? There's a freaking UFO in my backyard. It's like 4 feet." Like, you're gonna freak people out, man.
And that's what happened too, right? That's what
Yeah,
happened. I bet a lot of these sightings ended up being like even you talked about seeing the B2, right? When you were younger and you saw
yeah,
that fly over. I think you were telling me how you thought that if you didn't know what it was, you could think it was a UFO.
yeah. So we were growing up in Dallas. We have the Lockheed plant in Fort Worth, and we would see these like black wings flying around. And the first time I saw it, my dad had already seen it. And so he worked at the police station at the time, and he had heard rumors. He was a maintenance guy. He didn't work as a police officer, but he was kind of maintenance guy, and he had heard rumors about how people were calling in and saying, "Hey, there's like some weird shit flying around here. Nobody knows what's going on, and they look really odd. They don't look like planes. They look like these black UFO things." And so, he said that, a vast majority of them were just concerned people. They didn't know what it was, and they were just kind of like reporting it. But he was like, man, we had some crazy people calling in, like that the chick with the knives. It's a UFO. They're coming to stick stuff in my butt. And, like, who knows, man? That was a big thing. Everybody was all worried about anal probes. And I don't know. And
that's the strangest thing. Like, if you're an alien, why? Why are you going to do an anal probe? Why? It seems more reasonable that that's just something people are scared of. Men are who are straight are just, I don't know, scared of that type of stuff. It's a weird conversation to be having on our podcast, but it's like a fear. I don't know, like an ingrained fear, and so it seems more like that's manifesting itself as a fear, and you're having dreams or nightmares or something. But why would an alien want to stick something up your butt?
Well, I think you're talking about 50s, 60s America.
Right,
there was a different feel when it came to the LGBT community, back in those days, and I think a lot of it was like gay fear. I don't want stuff in my butt. If anybody's gonna fucking, abduct me, what's the worst thing that's gonna happen to me? Oh, I don't want things in my butt. People were really simple back then. Like, don't worry about taking my kidneys or, cutting part of my lung out. Just don't stick shit in my butt. Just please don't do that. I don't know, man. People are so stupid. Like, if you have the technology to fly across the universe or fly across the galaxy, at least, you can't just scan people. Like, why you gotta stick shit in their butt? Come on now. Come on.
Yeah.
Man. We shouldn't even be talking about this. But we are, because
why,
it's great.
And yeah, and that's the whole thing with UFOs in general. Why, if you're going to fly halfway across the galaxy, like you're saying, why would you just randomly, suddenly decide to show yourself over a farm in Iowa, and then let a few people get a few blurry pictures and then disappear, and that's it? If you wanted to make yourself known, you land in New York City or Washington or Moscow or something. If you don't want to make yourself known, if they're advanced enough, they can probably figure out a way to keep themselves unseen, do it from orbit, some sort of cloaking or whatever. You can imagine all these different technologies that they might have if they're 1,000 years more advanced than us.
Right.
Just the two doesn't make sense. If they want to be known, they can make themselves known. If they don't want to be known, I don't think it's like, oh, let's make ourselves known to a couple random farmers. Right. And that's it. We just want these farmers to go crazy and claim that they saw us, and then no one believes them. And we stuck something in their butt.
So we might as well just roll into that story anyway, since we're just digging into it. But so I actually have another one for Tyler's website. So if you guys want to just see a summary of all of it, make sure you go over to the War Zone and check out Tyler's and Joseph's summary of it. But basically what it is the U.S. Department of Defense released historical Navy videos, and it goes through. And if you go through this, it's just a real quick, release. And if there's a link at the bottom, if you click on the link, it'll take you to a document library, which will show you the 3 videos that they released, and all of from what I understand, I didn't go through all of them, but they're all of the reports, all of the FOIA documents that whoever requested this, they got. So they actually released it on the Naval Air Systems Command website. I'm going to show the first video. Can you see what I'm seeing, Greg?
I can see it, but I believe I'm 10 seconds behind or something. So why don't you play it all the way through? And by the time, I know the videos. So once I start seeing it,
okay,
I should be able to pick up.
So I'm going to turn the volume down.
You can kind of narrate what's going on for people who are just listening.
Yeah, I'm going to turn the volume down a little bit. So here is the first video they released. Let me play it. Let me zoom in a little bit. I don't think there's a whole lot of sound.
And none of this footage is new, too. We've had this footage for over a year now.
Right.
After that, Tom DeLonge got it declassed of the lead singer from Blink-182. Can you make it full screen if you can?
Yeah, I got it.
It's really small.
Yeah, you're just delayed. I got it playing
Oh,
full
okay.
screen. Yeah, I think we got about almost like a 20-second delay. So
Ooh, that'll be fun trying to coordinate. Yeah. So this one, it looks suspicious, right? But it's just a blob of light for the most part, right?
Mhm.
Who knows what it is? And it switches over from white hot to black hot.
yeah, there's not a whole lot to this one, just a bunch of flipping through. And there's no sound to it, so you don't hear the pilots, you don't hear anything,
Yeah. And it's
just a
just a
short video.
smut. Like you really have no reference to what it is. It could be an alien. It could be anything else in the world.
Yeah,
There's very little to.
could be a drone. You know, people were talking about how they'll put up those floating. Um, they're like they're like balloons, but they're shaped to reflect radar. So they're like really weird. I can't remember what they're called. Like, I'm sorry, I'm a submariner. I'm not a pilot, but um, you know, they'll put weird shapes up there to reflect certain testing. You know, testing this new radar system or SAM system or whatever they're doing, and they'll put up these balloons that'll reflect as much radar as they can and put off weird heat. And you know, who knows with drones now? Shit, I mean, you could do all kinds of crazy ass shit now.
Yeah, and that video there too. That's not even on radar. That's infrared. So I believe that was filmed by the AT FLIR,
Right.
the Advanced Tactical Forward-Looking Infrared system. So the way it's tracking it is by heat, not even radar.
Right.
And you can tell where it says range, 99.9. That's just maxed out, so it doesn't have a range
Right.
on it. Doesn't know how far away it is. It could be close. It could be real far away.
So I have this is the third video of them. I actually have them loaded backwards, so I'll do the third and then the second. So this is the go fast video. So this is the video of this thing. Looks like it's going pretty quick, and I think it actually has sound. So let me turn it down just a tad bit so I don't blare it out. Yeah, it just looks like it almost looks like a cruise missile flying.
It does. Yeah, flying, sea skimming. I've seen several cruise anti-ship missiles, and they look exactly like this one looks a little bit more like a dot.
Right.
So, but it could be far away.
Yeah, the volume's really loud. Because they're like, ha ha, they're just like talking like cowboys. I love it.
Yeah, it looks a lot like a missile.
I mean, it's really small, whatever it is. But, you know, there's people that have those hobby jets, you know, and those things are the size of a football and they have a jet engine on them and they fly, man. They fly. And they're super expensive, but I mean, they're quick and small like that. I mean, I have no idea how fast this thing's moving, but
No, and it's hard to tell, but it looks like it's flying. I don't know. I would guess a couple hundred miles an hour, 200, 300, 400 miles an hour, somewhere around there. And it's flying in a perfectly straight line. It looks like about a steady altitude. It looks more like an aircraft.
right.
They always talk about UFOs. How they're making these incredible maneuvers that defy physics and stuff.
Right.
And that doesn't mean it's not a UFO, but it's just not doing that, at least.
Yeah. So I'm just going to play it a few more times.
So the VC there, are you playing the same video?
Yeah, I'm just playing it over and over.
That VC there could be interesting. You could do a calculation. You figure out how fast. So I believe in the bottom left-hand corner where you have the M number, that's the Mach number. So that's how fast the aircraft that's recording it is flying at, 0.6 Mach. And then when he actually tracks it, you'll get a VC number there. That up in the top right-hand corner, kind of, it says 200 VC. That's your closing velocity. How close you're getting to it. So you could probably do some geometry and figure out how fast this thing is actually going.
Right.
170 at least right now it's going for me.
Yeah. I mean, whatever it is, it's pretty cool. It doesn't look like a
quickly
cruise
you're getting-
missile.
Yeah, but it could be something small, like a Hellfire or something, and it's so far away that you just can't tell the dimensions of it. And also, this is infrared too, so this is showing heat, so you might not be able to see the actual missile part necessarily, but you're seeing the exhaust of it.
So anyway, so there's that one, and then I got
range.
the other
There,
one.
we got a range. You got 3.8. Yeah, 3.7.
So here's the second one. Let me start it over real quick because they actually talked during this one. This is the one that got really famous where you can hear the fighter pilot talking the whole time. So
Dude, this is fucking drone, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude. That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not. That is the LNS, dude. Well, if there's like... Look at that thing. It's rotating.
So that one being a lot more interesting because it looks a lot more like a drone. It looks a little bit more UFO-y. You see it kind of rotate at the end of the video and stuff. I'm just going to play it over
But the
and over
major
as we
thing
talk.
with that is you have to realize that what you're seeing is not the object. You're not seeing the object.
Right.
You're seeing the heat because that's what this is. This is infrared.
Right.
So the black, down in the bottom left-hand corner, you can see it says BLK. So the black is hot. Or it's switching back and forth. Now it's white hot.
Right.
So that's heat. And I couldn't find a great video of it, but to me it looks a lot like a jet aircraft flying in front of it, maybe farther away. And that's the heat plume coming out of its engine from behind. Because that heat, it'll kind of blur the camera and you'll see a smudge like that. And then when it turns, you can see it banking. And if you want to pull up that YouTube video I found. It's not it's not a greatest video. This is the first one I could find in a short period of time before we started recording. But yeah, pull up that video of the Russian aircraft. And again, this is an infrared, forward-looking infrared. And it's very close, so it doesn't look exactly like it. But you can see, again, if you flip it from white hot to black hot, and you can also see the glare start to rotate as the aircraft just slowly banks.
Right. Exactly.
And, I'm starting to become, and I have no idea. I could be completely wrong, but I'm starting to become more and more in the camp that this whole thing could be a prank.
You think so?
I think so. Yeah. Because the main guy who did this, Commander Fravor, he is the one who filmed a few of these different things. Yes, that footage right there. Again, I'm probably behind, so.
Right.
But you can see how it's kind of rotating there as the aircraft kind of rotates and the perspective changes.
Right.
So you can see that glare kind of change back and forth. But he was on Joe Rogan's show. I don't know if you watched that one, Eric.
Yeah, I did.
Joe Rogan had on. Yeah, and if you remember, he talked about how he used to prank people. He used to fly. I don't remember the exact story, but he was talking about how he used to turn all his lights off on his aircraft, fly real low and slow over like beaches, and then just fool the tourists and different people on the island and make them think it was a UFO.
Right.
And he did that on purpose. He talked about how he used to do that. So this guy's a prankster. So I'm starting to think more that this could possibly
enjoy the rest of the show. Enjoy the sights and the sound of the Blue Angels before you. I'm out of here.
But there probably were some sightings going on. There might have been some things picked up on radar. They sent some aircraft, and Commander Fravor might have thought that, hey, this is the perfect time for me to take this to the next level and just kind of prank everyone.
Right.
And again, I could be wrong. We had that Fighter Pilot podcast guy on, that Vincent Aiello.
Vincent Aiello, yeah.
Yep, and he was on the aircraft carrier that day that this happened.
Yeah.
And he's friends with Fravor. He had Fravor on his podcast. And he is not under the same impression as me. He thinks that he's telling the truth, that he has no reason to play this prank on people. So maybe he knows, he probably knows more than I do. But right now, that's kind of my impression. I could be wrong. I'm not sure. But I'm starting to believe that more and more as I look more and more at this footage.
Man, it's crazy that our podcast has got us that close to that story. You know what I mean? Like, I never thought putting this podcast together we would talk to people who were there.
Degrees of separation.
Man, awesome. Yeah, if you guys haven't seen that, check out that YouTube. Check out that YouTube video. It's one of our biggest YouTube videos with Vincent. He's great. I want to try to have him on again if we can, because he's had a lot of really great videos. Because they're getting ready to release Top Gun. Him being a Top Gun instructor is, man, awesome. Well,
I believe they delayed that. Did you see they're delaying Top Gun? I was a little bit upset. I didn't care if the coronavirus was going on or not. I was going to go buy a ticket regardless and take the risk. But I think they delayed it till winter.
Yeah,
no
from what I'm
longer
hearing.
will be coming out this summer.
So yeah, I don't know, but anyways, So yeah, make sure you guys go check out those documents. There's a lot of good stuff in there if you want to pick through it yourself. Don't let it. I'm a big believer in not letting other people tell you the narrative. Just go look at it yourself. It's right there, man. This is easy stuff, man. That's a great thing about open source intelligence and FOIAs and everything else. Don't let other people do it. I mean, it's gonna take work. You're gonna have to sit down and read shit. You're gonna have to pick through stuff and waste your time, but you will find it. You'll find the answer for yourself if you just spend enough time on it.
And that's true with everything too. Like the you know, the one I'm obviously obsessed with, the JFK assassination, and I'm still reading different stuff to this day. But stuff like that, I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who they've seen a YouTube video, they've read a book on this or that, and they bring up facts and they'll talk about different things, which are clearly, very, very clearly explained in the original Warren Commission. So whoever they got the information from was purposely misleading them. But no one bothers to actually go to the source themselves. And I get it. Everyone's got a life. You know, you got different things to do. You can't sit down and read all 900 pages of the Warren Commission, plus all the testimonies.
Right.
But double check everything you see. Definitely. Don't believe us either. I mean, look into this stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, especially like we were talking about the coronavirus. You know, we were you know, not necessarily hit and miss, but it was kind of rough goings for us on that first podcast because, you know, we were just rolling with what we had, you know. And the UFO thing's always been kind of that deal. People are just rolling with the information they've been giving them. But now this stuff's it's all getting released because they have to release it after so many years. So just ask, you know, like I put in a FOIA request for the sinking of the USS Thresher and the sinking of the USS Scorpion because, you know, I've read Pomar's book and all this other stuff. Like I've read all these books on the sinking, but I want to pick through it myself. I think there's a lot more to it than what's, you know, been released over the past 20 years. I think there's some design issues. I think there's some other issues with that boat that the Navy was kind of hiding. I mean, I hate to say it, but it is what it is. So I'm going to pick through it myself. I hope I don't find that. I hope I don't find a bunch of shit that makes me lose faith in, you know, the people that were designing our reactors and, you know, nuclear powered submarines back in the day. But I just want to know. I'm not going to sit here and let other people tell me. So I'm going to look through it myself. You can do that as an American citizen. You can put in a FOIA. Shit, it's going to take me. Oh God, I put the request in. When did I put the request in? A year ago?
That was about a year ago. Yeah, I think it was right before I moved here.
Yeah, and I got a reply back from the CIA saying they're working on it and they're gonna release everything to me, and it's gonna be free because I'm gonna release it to everybody. I'm not gonna lock it up because if you can actually have them release the information to you, and if you don't release it to the public, you have to pay for it. So I'm just gonna put it on the Discord server and the subreddit and everything else and release it to everybody so everybody else can go through it too. I think that's really important.
Might as well. Yeah, I mean it's not something you're gonna necessarily make a profit off of. So
yeah, I'm not a writer. Yeah, you know, I'm not gonna write a book. So
right, or even a news article or anything. Yeah, you're interested in the information and you like everyone to be too.
Yeah, I'll throw a few tweets out there. Look what I found. I found this crap. You know, I don't know. Yep. I think it's important. It's one of the great things about being an American is we can do that. So I think it's important if you have the interest, do it. You know, don't be afraid to ask. It's one of the things I try to explain to people when they ask me about nuclear power. They ask me about submarines. Just ask. If it's something I can't tell you, I'm not going to tell you. So just, you know, that's on me. You need to understand that person should say no. They should say I can't tell you. If they tell you, that's on them. You know. I mean, obviously, you shouldn't be like trying to honeypot people, you know, pay them off and shit, obviously. But if you just genuinely ask because you're interested, that's really on them, you know. So, you know, when we were talking to our last guest, and we were talking about nuclear reactors, and you know, just ask. You know, I'm the one that had the clearance. It's on me. So just ask. If I can't tell you, I'm not going to tell you. So.
So Eric, how fast can a LA class go? Top speed?
I can't tell you that, and you know, and it really depends. You know, every
35 knots, right?
Every submarine's different, right? You know,
35 knots.
We talking about an LA class 1, class 2, class 3. How long has it been in commission? You know, is it? You know, one of the things I try to tell people is, okay, you want to talk about max speed? Okay, is that submarine? Have they trimmed the grass skirt off of it? Because that's a huge difference. You want to talk top speed, that grass skirt could give you 4 knots. You know, if you have a clean, slick sub right out of the dock, you could get super high speeds. But if that thing's been floating around the Mediterranean for 4 months and it's got a grass skirt on it, a foot wide, you're gonna lose.
You're talking about the algae and everything building up on the boat, right?
Yeah. Here, let me pull up the picture of the Alpha. You can kind of see it.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yep.
So they pulled it right out of the water, and you could see it had been sitting there for a while. But that's the grass skirt right there. So that algae, whatever it is, the algae buildup, whatever it could be all kinds of stuff. It could be barnacles, all that stuff that just builds up on the outside. It'll slow you down. Imagine you have a race car and you put a bunch of like stringers on the outside of it. That's exactly what this thing is. You're basically throwing a parachute on the back of it. So it'll slow it down 4 or 5 knots, or depending on how big it is, it could be 10 knots, depending on the submarine. Like, an Alpha class, it could really hold it back because that's something that needs to be, at top build at all times for it to have that max speed. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Depends. That's the answer I've learned over the years is I'm not going to necessarily not tell you, but it really depends.
Yeah, nothing's ever that simple. Like if you ever watch the YouTube videos, they have top 10 best fighter jets or top 10 best anti-ship missiles. Well, it's all kind of BS because there's a million other things that come into play than just their speed,
right?
Or different things like that. So,
yeah, definitely. So anyway, so there's that. We also have a few other stories if you want to go into them. So we have just a quick little OSINT. I want to try to do like a little OSINT update if I can, just for everybody. Just a real simple one, but
Eric, you want to give me a quick break, real quick. I gotta step off real quick.
Yeah, no worries.
I'll come right back in 10 seconds.
Yeah, our podcast gets long, so you gotta take some bathroom breaks every once in a while. But so the big one being, or no, I say big one, but we've heard a lot about the German Navy and a lot of issues they've had with their submarines. At one point, they had them basically all pulled out. From what I understand, they were all out of the water. I mean, obviously their submarine force isn't huge. It's not World War II times, but I think they got 6 at this point that are commissioned and in the water. But they had another issue with U-33. So I think it's U-32 to U-38. I think those are the 6 submarines. Sorry if I get that wrong. I'm still learning, but U-33 had some problems with their torpedo tube. Apparently it was leaking, which is no good. You don't want a 533 millimeter opening leaking because that would be no good. One of the stories they always told us when we were underwater was, let's say for whatever reason you could open both torpedo room or both torpedo tube doors at the same time. How fast would you flood the boat? And it was like seconds. Like you wouldn't even be able to. It would just blow up. It'd be done. Like there's just no way you're gonna stop anything like that. Which is one of the things I got. I had a lot of respect for torpedo tubes. That's a huge opening, especially if you're, playing cold waters and you're at 1,500 feet. You're talking about 44 feet or 44 pounds every 100 feet. So if you're at 1,000 feet, you're looking at 440 pounds of pressure on the hull at any time. That's a lot of damn pressure, especially if you just open a 21-inch tube and flood it. So you only got a second or two. It's over. Like you're not going to survive anything like that. So, they don't mess around with torpedo tube leaks, and that's one of the reasons you have multiple. That's one of the reasons you have multiple torpedo tubes and separated systems is that if that thing does leak, you can kind of isolate it, and you still have. Let's say you have 6 torpedo tubes. You still have 5 that are functioning. Maybe you can separate it in half, and so you have 3 of them that don't work, but you still have the other 3 because the whole system failed, right? It's kind of a redundant system that submarines use. They generally will split the boat in half. So you basically have 2 whole boats, minus reactors and stuff, where you have the starboard side and the port side. And so if the whole entire starboard side fails, you still have a submarine. It just is only working on the left half. So anyways, one of the things I found online about that, they pulled in yesterday to do some work. So they're going to be out of the game for a little while,
And are there sensors in there too that'll tell them if there's a leak?
Yeah.
Obviously, before you actually open the tube door and flood the whole thing.
Right. Yeah. You don't want to open the tube unless you know it's free of water. So, one of the things you do before you open the tube to the people space is you drain it and vent it, right? Because you can't open it if it's not vented. And then you got to drain it because you don't want to flood this people space. So generally they'll put a sensor at the low part of the tube, generally in the drain line. So if the drain line's got water in it, you could just open the drain line and not only empty the tube, but you end up emptying the drain system below it. So it's definitely not got any water in it. And if you got a leak on the outside of the tube, especially the outer door, you'll just constantly get seawater in. Now, from what I understand, usually whenever you have something like that happen, it's because you close the outer door on the wire. So if you end up whenever you shoot a torpedo out, the wire comes into the torpedo tube and into the inner door, and the inner door has a wire that connects to it, and so you can communicate to the torpedo through the tube. So before you shut the torpedo tube, you have to cut the wire. You have to allow the wire to leave, and then you shut the outer door. If you shut the outer door without the wire leaving the tube, you can foul the hatch. And it'll tell you the hatch didn't close. You probably get, obviously if you're doing like torpedo operations, it's the wire because you have a wire in it. And so you say, oh shit, the tube can't close, the wire's caught. So you open the outer door back up, try to cut the wire again. Hopefully the wire leaves the tube and you try to close it again. And when you do that, if you close the outer door on a wire, more than likely you're going to damage the seal on the outer door and it'll cause it to constantly leak. So more than likely that's probably what happened is they had something get caught in the tube on the outer door and it was more than likely a wire. So, it happens, I'm not saying that happened to us, but it does happen to submarines for sure, especially if you have a wire.
So how does it seems like that could happen a lot. So if you don't cut the wire, say the torpedo then went and detonated, there's no longer anything there on the other end of the wire where the torpedo was to continue pulling that wire. So if the torpedo detonated, wouldn't that wire just sit in the tube then? Especially if you're going forward.
It could. It depends on the situation. I've what if that submarine's going backwards? Well, it doesn't matter. What if it's going, 40? It's an alpha class. It's going 42 knots, and they try to launch one, and they've still got the wire caught in it. Well, that wire could just be getting caught in the tube and just slowly pulling backwards. It really just depends. It's like anything else. It really depends on the situation. In a nice situation where you're sitting at 5 knots. You got them in your sights. You're just gonna snipe them from far away. Yeah, the idea is to cut the wire before the torpedo hits because you gotta have that pull out, right? Nothing's gonna pull that wire out. There's no super dynamic system to pull the wire out in case that shit doesn't happen. You gotta hope that wire gets pulled. So it's one of the holy grail of submarines is how do you connect to the torpedo not through the tube. Nobody's been able to really figure out how you connect the wire outside of the tube. So, I hate to say it, but more than likely they probably messed up shooting during an exercise and fouled the hatch. So, it is what it is. But it's going to be a big old fix. That's what's one of the crazy things about being on submarines is as an operator, if you don't hit that button at the right time, you don't do the right thing, you close the hatch on a wire, man, you just, especially in Germany, you lost one of your greatest assets because you pushed the wrong button.
Yeah, they don't have many either. Right. Yeah.
Not even including reactors, right? You start throwing reactors in, reactor operators, they push the wrong button. You're talking about a huge deal, right? Nukes, right? And this is just a guy trying to shoot a torpedo out of a tube. So, I don't know, man. I think it's a really interesting story. I wanted to share that with everybody.
And then you had more pictures too of can you hear me? You
Yeah.
had more pictures too of the vacuum tube or the pressure tube that they actually stored submarines in, or they would test submarines.
Yeah, so
that was pretty incredible.
Yeah, one of my favorite follows that I've had lately is Johan_U96. I think he's German. He generally will post a lot of German stuff. and he posted these photos of they call it the Druck dock, which is a pressure dock built in '67 to pressure test German submarines. So they would actually pull their submarines into this tube, and these pictures look pretty recent. I think it's still there. It's just decommissioned. But they would pull their submarines in, and they could pressure and or vacuum test their submarines, the entire submarine, front to back. I thought that was amazing. I've never heard of this. Here's a picture of them pulling in one of the older submarines.
But, and look at how big that door is. Go to the picture with the that giant door on the left-hand side.
Oh yeah, let me pull up the door. Yeah, so you can see the door right here. Oh man, it's enormous. It's gotta be 10 feet wide.
Probably more than that.
Well, talk good stuff about this door. I'm gonna go take a break if you don't mind.
I'll try to figure out something.
All right.
But it's incredibly. He's talking about how nowadays, unfortunately, the what's the name of their submarine? The 212 are too large to fit in there, and that's going to be a problem, obviously, with nuclear reactors and everything. Submarines are much larger than they used to be, so it's going to have a hard time really actually taking advantage of that anymore. And he was talking about how, so I can see you can use this thing for several different reasons. For example, if you want to pressurize it, find out where a leak is. If you have a leak, like we were talking about earlier with the torpedo door, or I think he said in there too, if I can read underneath Eric's picture. So they would also use it to verify crush depth. So you can probably overpressurize that to the point that would simulate certain depths and see if there's any damage to the submarine after that. So it's pretty cool. I wonder if it shows what city that is in. Sorry, I'm going to do a little bit of Googling. German sub 212. See if they say where they were built or operated. I don't know enough about the German Navy to really get into this, but they're not even nuclear powered. All right, ignore that I said all that. It's in AIP.
So I'm over here listening to Greg spread some disinformation about submarines.
Yep.
No.
We needed you for that part. You left me on the worst part. You left me on your expertise section.
Okay, so question is power? I heard you talk about nuclear power.
Yeah, I mentioned nuclear power and I was wrong. It's air independent propulsion. It's a diesel submarine.
Yeah. So only French. I eat too much ranch dressing.
UK,
yeah,
China, Russia, the US.
Yep. And
maybe one other we're forgetting about, but
I know South Korea has been always teasing it. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
No, probably not.
No, I think that's it. I know Brazil's always been kind of teasing it. I don't think they're going to get it anytime soon.
Do you know where their submarine base is? Where is the submarine base?
Which one? The German Navy?
Yeah.
Oh, I have no idea. They've been off my radar since World War II. I have no idea. Is that too early? I'm sorry.
Too early. It's only been 75 years.
No,
78 years.
I honestly don't know. I'm sure if you just look up Doc C German Navy, I'm sure you can pull up something there.
Oh, you know what? I wonder if somebody actually did it for our project. You can just look it up there.
Yeah, so you want to talk about your project a little bit? I can't pull it up, but you should let everybody know about what you're working on.
Oh yeah. We haven't done much with it recently, but we were trying to go through and map every military site, every single one, radar, air base, naval base, army base, everything, every single thing in the entire world. And we've gotten pretty far, actually. We just haven't done much recently on it.
Right.
But I want to get back to doing that. It doesn't look like anyone did the German Navy yet. But we have a lot of Europe done. We have all of France. Actually, it looks like we only have the army for France. We have all Spain done, Portugal, Italy, the UK, Belgium, the Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland. I mean, we got a lot of stuff done. Poland. I gotta get back into it, get more people excited about it, so we can finish this thing off and have a completed project. Because that's something I've always wanted ever since I don't know, 10 years ago when I first discovered Google Earth. I've always wanted to have a project, uh, what they call it is a KMZ file, where you can have every single military base and you can look at it. So I was interested in something they were talking about in the news. You go look it up, you can find exactly where it is. Or if you just want to explore, you can look at different bases everyone has. And we've done a pretty good job. Like we got everything in Iran. We have a bunch of different sites marked in Syria, which obviously was a big point a few years ago when we started this. But besides that, yeah, North Korea has a lot.
Yeah. I'm looking at the flower on Commando Store, and he says, featured on Vice and InfoWars. We got to make sure he puts our podcast on there.
Vice and InfoWars.
And InfoWars.
Those are like the two opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
That's
man.
pretty funny.
Good times. Dakota made bread flour. Anyways, I don't have anything else as far as I know. We're about an hour and a half in.
Yeah.
Oh, India. I forgot about Indian submarines. Yep, they definitely have nuclear power.
Oh yeah, that's right. The Arihan and
oh man, poor guys. Talk about leaving a hatch open. Man, having a hatch open. Oh god.
Yeah.
I don't want to call him out.
Yeah.
Just look up the story if you haven't heard.
And it happens. It's hard. Like you were talking about subsafe, right? You almost have to learn the hard way in some of this stuff, and unfortunately, that's the case.
Oh
you
man,
don't want to.
I'll tell you. I know submarines that were in port with the hatch open just because they're in port, moored to the pier, and you just get hit by a random wave, and you're just sitting there, just you're just below decks. You're just a below decks watch, right? You're just the guy that's just supposed to be there. And then all of a sudden, boom, you're taking on water because this giant cruise ship went way too close to the pier or some shit. And, it just happens, man. I think in that instant, they were supposed to have it closed and they didn't. They didn't double check. But, it happens. I mean, how many submarines have you seen where they sink at the pier, right? It's a stupid way for them to die, but, it does happen. And I know submarines that have taken on water just sitting there doing absolutely nothing but just being moored in port and having the hatches open because you have to let people on and off. So what do you do?
Yeah, and submarine operations, along with anything in the military, but submarine operations especially, is very complex. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. You're talking about all the different diesel systems, diesel engine, and all the different systems that have to come into play. We were talking about that Chinese submarine. Different things that could cause that, all this stuff that you need to have perfectly right. And other countries may have experience in it and they figured out all the kinks and they know how to do it safely, but no one's releasing that information. It's all secret, right?
No.
So you have to learn it for yourself. And unfortunately, in a lot of these cases, you got to learn the hard way. Unfortunately, obviously no one wants that to be the case, but
yeah,
happen.
And that's one of the great things about going through these files and learning this shit yourself, because you're gonna realize that person who wrote that thing probably missed this other thing that you didn't know about, and that's gonna make a big difference. Like, for example, if a submarine's sitting on a pier, it's just in port doing nothing, just routine maintenance. We're in port, everybody's going to see their families. It's just another day. It's a Saturday, right? Everybody's just hanging out. All of a sudden the submarine takes a wave and it floods and it sinks. Well, okay, fair enough. But there's a lot of caveats to that, right? How was the boat trimmed? Was the boat having problems with the blow system that keeps it from floating back up? Did it have an emergency blow system that was tagged out? There's just like so much stuff to these stories that a lot of people just skim through because they want to make money selling some shit. So that's one of the reasons I really like the war zones, because he doesn't do that, right? Tyler doesn't go through there and just kind of like throw bullshit. He actually does spend some time, talk to the people who are system experts. Like he'll send me a DM and ask me, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Like he'll actually talk to people and not put bullshit out there as best he can. But you have a lot of people that do, especially, you're talking about mainstream news that's starting to die and all these people, they're just going to throw some shit. There's not a lot of credibility, there's not a lot of credibility there anymore. And, it does matter. All these little things do fucking matter. If you have a submarine that sinks and the emergency blow system's tagged out, that's a huge deal, right? Because it doesn't work. Well, if it did work, that the boat maybe have survived, right? So you have to understand these things, and the only way you're going to know for sure is if you go through that shit yourself. You have to go through these files yourself. Look at the video yourself. Do this shit yourself. Don't let these people talk to you like that.
Yeah. And everyone doesn't have the time for all that. But yeah, like you mentioned, Tyler in the war zone, they're definitely one of the sources that I always go to. And he always goes so deep into all the detail. And actually, we can mention Jive Turkey, right? Isn't he becoming a contributor over there?
Yeah, definitely. Jive's been contributing to. He's doing his own special intel briefs and stuff. So if you end up subscribing to his Patreon and stuff, you can get these like private intel briefs he does on, like, I think he's done a lot of Russian submarine stuff. So he's doing a lot of really good stuff. And I know that Saturnax is providing him with some photos and some intelligence and stuff to help him out. So it's just all the communities kind of coming together, and we're all just really working together. It's super cool to be a part of all this. And
the whole mainstream media, like you said, I mean, it's so bad. So bad. I don't care if you're right wing, left wing, Fox News, CNN, it's all bad. It's so bad. The New York Times does some good investigative work, definitely, especially when it comes to the military. But anyone else, I mean, we got to try to get Tyler on again. That would be cool. But I think you were on the call. We talked to Tyler on the phone for a while, and he'll just start going on about all this stuff, and the amount of knowledge that he has on all of these systems is incredible. I talked to him on the phone I think 3 or 4 times for over an hour each time, and we'll just go back and forth and talk about all these different systems, and we'll get all. That's how it works. He'll get really excited, really obsessed with a topic, and I do the same thing. That's what I have to do to make a video on it. I have to become obsessed with it, and then I make a video and I get it out of my system and move on to the next thing. Same thing with him. He'll get real obsessed with a topic. Last time I talked to him, he was really into the whole UCAV system, and he was just going on and on and on. And it sounds bad the way I'm wording it, but it was so interesting. You can tell he just really has a passion for it, and he wants to get the information out there, not trying to present or not trying to put a certain viewpoint forward like you'll see on Fox News or CNN or anything else, right?
Right.
But yeah, we should try to get him on again. I think he is a great source.
Yeah, we've definitely changed our format over. We've been doing this almost a year now. I think we're at like 40 videos or something like that. And it used to be we would just talk into a mic, and then we would just edit all the video down or all the audio down, and we would just be super clean. It was just audio, but we've always felt that it's really important. We've always felt like it's really important to show video. Oh God, yeah, and it would take us weeks to clean the audio up and stuff. Oh, it just was not worth it, man. We would have great clean interviews
too.
Yeah.
Cut down every little gap we had.
Yeah, you could sit there and pick that apart to death, and I love my wife, and she took care of all that for me, and I really appreciate everything she did for us. And it took a long time to clean that up, and it just wasn't worth it. And now we can show video, right? We could show video of everything that we see, because I come across stuff every day, man, every single day. And I come across really fun stuff that I share on Twitter, but not everybody uses it. So I want to make sure that, the YouTube crew can kind of see what we see too. And so it's going to blow up one day.
You know what I found with Twitter? Everyone, I feel like a lot of people talk about how Twitter is so toxic. It's just people arguing about each other.
I'm going to tell you that.
But I don't experience any of that at all. Any of it. Maybe it's just the people I follow. I stay away from anything political. I don't want to follow. I follow Donald Trump, but that's because he's the president. I also follow the Russian Ministry of Defense and the Israeli and different things like that. Maybe it's just, but go ahead. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just the type of people I follow.
trying to build these communities over the years, especially dealing with Reddit, Twitter. I've completely I've cut myself off Facebook 100%. Your environment that you experience is how you want to experience it. If you go on there and you talk about politics all day, all the shit that comes back to you is going to be politics. If you go out there, and what I did was I tailored my Twitter account to be only submarines. No politics, no fucking dinner photos, no bullshit. It is, 1 out of 1,000 tweets I put out is going to be off topic. It's going to be all submarines, right? Or Navy related, generally most military stuff. We'll talk about Tac Ops in the podcast, but it is what you make of it. And my Twitter account has become the greatest asset I have ever experienced, minus the subreddit, because the subreddit's a bunch of people and they go there for a subject, so it
filters out all that stuff.
I think of growing a community is kind of like trimming a tree, right? I've had people tell me really toxic bullshit that as a community manager you're a sheep herder, and I think that's horseshit. I think you are you kind of a tree trimmer. You just keep everybody on topic, right? Don't let the tree grow into the house, right? Just make it look decent and let it kind of grow itself, right? And,
that's a good example, yeah.
And Twitter has become that because I've trained the bots, or the algorithms, all that shit, to just be submarines, because that's all I do all day on there. And I will get shit from other countries. I'll get shit from Japan and Russia. That's how I'm at Cap Navy. That's how I find all this weird Japanese shit online. It just comes to me now because the algorithms are just feeding me submarine shit. And I've just built the whole entire system back to feed me. Just like was my original idea with the subreddit was, I don't know shit about Russian submarines without buying a bunch of books. I don't know. Nobody knows shit about Chinese submarines. Nobody knows shit about Pakistan. Nobody knows a lot about India. How the fuck do I pull this together? Let's just put a bunch of people together and we'll just talk. That was the whole idea behind our submarines in the subreddit, right? But Twitter has become a bot service for me where it just feeds me. And I network with people like you and all these, Saturn X, Cap Navy. I've met movie directors. I've met all these people that I've the Naval Institute. I'm talking to the Naval Institute. I'm just a dude in a living room drinking whiskey. and they're
turkey?
like, yeah, no, I'm drinking Ezra Brooks tonight. You gotta go the cheap way. It's good stuff. But
the times.
But the Naval Institute they were the ones that really helped out Tom Clancy, in the Hunt for Red October.
Yeah, that's right.
And they're DMing me, and I'm like, what is going on? I don't understand. And so you just roll with it. And it is what you make of it. Twitter has become my greatest asset. I think the subreddit's great, but the problem with the subreddit is I can't really talk to those people. It's really difficult to communicate with people over Reddit. So we have the Discord server where we can talk, but nobody wants to download another app. So overall, Twitter has become my greatest asset overall, hands down.
Yeah, it is
all of our guests have all come off Twitter, except for a few through email.
A couple that I've gotten, yeah,
right,
yeah, a few of them, but almost all of them, yeah. If you stay away from a lot of that stuff, I've unfollowed people who start talking about Trump, whether it's good or bad, and besides that, it's a great source, really great source. I really curate who I follow. I think I only follow like 30 people, and it's an incredible amount of information, real good information you get from there.
Yeah, and if you follow people who have a high amount of followers, and they follow a low amount of people, they generally get a subject. Those are the people. I'm not trying to shout out myself, but generally those are the people you want to follow because they're honed in on a subject. And if you look at my Twitter account, it's all submarines, right? A little bit of Navy, a little bit of military, but it's everything submarines. I want everybody to know that if they go to my Twitter account, 95% of the time they're going to see some cool shit about submarines. So it is what you make of it, So, if you go on there and just talk shit about Trump all day, that's what you're gonna get. It's just other people talking shit about Obama or whatever the fuck, whatever. Abortion, like there's a lot of shit that you just go out there. There's no answer. People are just hating on each other.
It's just arguing. Yeah. There's no right answer necessarily. Obviously, everyone thinks they have the right answer, but you can argue. Both sides have points, and it's really nice. I mean, doing my YouTube channel, I find it very peaceful to be able to completely separate. And now maybe I'm from the U.S., so maybe I am still biased in ways that I do not consciously recognize. But it's very nice to be able to just like take a step back and not care. I don't care if Trump is good or bad. I don't, like I can take a step back, look at it more objectively, not really have a dog in the fight, so to say, and just try to find the truth. And it's relaxing and peaceful in a way to separate it. Yeah, everyone's got their own politics. They like Trump, they hate Trump, or whatever. And but it's nice to be able to take a step back. And anyway, we kind of went on that. Now Twitter has to pay us for that.
Right.
Maybe we can get them as a sponsor.
Well, and
everyone has a bad word to say about Twitter.
Yeah, exactly. and that's one of the goals about this podcast and my Twitter account and the subreddit is you stay on topic, you stay on subject, right? Don't talk about politics, don't talk about abortion, don't talk about religion, don't talk about anything that doesn't really have an answer, right? We're going to just stay on military shit. Military topics, obviously you can't completely cut yourself away from politics because it is the military and it is ran by politicians, but you have to do your best, right? And so we don't throw politics in there. We don't do any shit like that. We just try to really highlight the technology, the heroism, the stories, the people behind it, all of the great things behind the actual event, not the people who are controlling all of it and just making decisions,
So after we're done here, Eric, I'll talk to you. I got a few ideas for the podcast, and I want to run them by you first, but that'll be a little bit of a teaser for people listening right now. I have a few ideas of things we could do. In the meantime, we almost never mention it, right? Our Patreon.
Right.
Any money we get through there, we spend money. Like we went out on the trip to Houston. We went to the World of Warships thing, and we went out to a museum. That necessarily wasn't the podcast thing, but it was all related to it. And we have a few other ideas in mind. So if you guys are in a position to do it, I know with everything going on in the world right now, it could be stressful not knowing if you're going to get your next paycheck. And trust me, I know how that feels. But if you're in a position to do it, go ahead and check out our Patreon. Eric, I don't know if you could pull it up there.
I've got it up right now.
Okay. Yep. So you should be able to find it. What is it called? Just Tac Ops?
Yep. Just patreon.com/join/Tac Ops. And we've set it up to be tiered, but we don't have a whole lot of rewards at this point because we just haven't had a whole lot of interest in it. But one of the things we're going to do is go through and tier it. So, if you give us $15 a month, we'll give you a shout out on the podcast or anything like that. So we're going to go through there and kind of grow it where it needs to be, because Greg's right. I'm gonna upload a video so you guys can see it. But when me and Greg went down to the USS Texas, we never really understood anything about AA defense, right? Especially on an old World War II ship. But when we sat there on that AA gun, we had, for whatever reason, it was just, I don't know if it was luck or the military gods were just blessing us or whatever it was, but it looked like an old World War II airplane was flying around the ship.
Oh yeah.
So so we sat there and we had our camera and we had all this stuff. I got it on my GoPro and we're sitting there trying to shoot this World War II plane.
The wheel, yeah.
Yeah. It was so great, man.
Forgot.
It was so cool. And so all that stuff, like I would love to go out there and do that every time, but it costs us money to drive to Houston or to drive to Galveston to go see the SeaWorld Park, whatever it is. Like it costs us money. So, I'm not, if we were to receive funds, which we've been getting paid for sponsors and shit over the years and stuff like that. All of it's been reinvested. We have not kept any of it. I have a job.
Yeah. We've spent, we neither one of us have made a profit off this. We've spent more money, I believe. Maybe I have to. We're maybe about broken even, but we have some different plans in the works that maybe we can do. But it's a labor of love, right? We do it because it's fun. We're really not making much off of it, So if, like I said, if if you're in the position to do it, go over and check that out. And we're going to use that and reinvest it back in and see if we can do some more bigger and exciting things.
Yeah, I mean, unless we start making crazy money overnight, just understand that a vast majority of it's going to be reinvested. Because I have a job, Greg's got a nice paying job, so we don't necessarily need it to survive. I don't need your $15 a month to pay my rent. We already got that covered. We want to make our project big. We want to grow this thing into something more than just 200 views, or whatever it is, 300 views. Like, we want you guys to really. We want to give you what you want. So, anyways.
Yep. All right, that's enough begging for your money.
Yeah.
Anyway,
give us your money.
Thank you for anyone who hung in through that. Anything else you want to add to it, Eric?
No, man, I think that's it. I think we had a good night. We're about to hit 2 hours, so I turned into a pumpkin at 2 hours.
Yeah.
Anyway,
all right,
so
I think we're done.
Yeah,
wrap it up?
So I think that's it. Make sure you guys check out the Commando store, hit up our Patreon, check out our King Neptune 767 on Twitter, check out the Covert Cabal YouTube channel. You got some good ones up lately. I've really enjoyed your late ones. And I guess that's it. If you guys want to hit us up, make sure you hit us up at the Tac Ops podcast at gmail.com. We take sponsors. We take free money. I don't necessarily want your nudes, but we'll do what we do. So you guys enjoy
Depends
it. Yeah, it depends. Anyway, so enjoy your night, and we'll see you hopefully next weekend. We're going to try to do these every week, if not every 2 weeks. So
Yep.
We'll see you guys then. I'm going to try to end this the right way.